Welcome to a live Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I am your host, Keri, and it's good to be back with you guys. Welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat. I apologize. First off, I apologize for not being here Friday. I was traveling and didn't make it back in time to do a show, and honestly, with all the travel and back pain that I've had the past 2 weeks, on Friday I was like I couldn't even do a late show. It wouldn't have been good. So yeah, I've been trying all kinds of things for this back pain. I don't think I've talked about it on an episode yet, but I pulled my back out 2 weeks ago, and I've never had this experience before. My husband has, and he assures me that it's going to get better. I'm hoping. I've been to the doctor once. I'm going back again, doing my stretches, drinking all kinds of turmeric root and ginger root stuff. And yeah, where any suggestions you have, I'm trying everything. So let me know. Welcome. Like I said, the other announcement I want to make, aside from apologizing for not being here Friday, is I think I'm going to start doing the live shows on Mondays and Fridays at 2:00. I've started up one of my gig jobs again, working with a furniture maker that I used to work with. And so I think 2:00 on Mondays and Fridays will be better and help me accommodate that. So I hope that works for folks. It's not that much later than I'm supposed to start usually. We're moving from 1:00 to 2:00 on Mondays and Fridays. And I hope that that's okay with people, most of the people who are able to be here when we do these live. Hey Jennifer, I see a lot of Pirate Tomsky's here. Look at his Santa hat. Back pain, you say? Welcome to my life. Yeah, well, I'm pretty blessed. I haven't dealt with back pain before. I have a very strong back, and somehow I pulled it, and it's not been a picnic. Plus I was driving. What's crazy is after I pulled it, I've been driving so many trips the past 2 weeks. So I would be in cars. I would be in my truck for like 7-hour stretches at a time, multiple times during the past 2 weeks. And I think that might have contributed to it. So anyway, welcome. If you're new here, thanks for letting me get the announcements out of the way. We're going to be talking about the acquittal of Daniel Penny today and the case of the New York subway hero. I refuse to call him a vigilante. It's ridiculous. He's a hero. I'm very happy that he's been acquitted. And if you're on the left, I hope you'll stick around because I want to show you some facts about the case that you may not know, and also some comparisons that you may not know. I have some questions for you about the narrative that was put out by the corporate media and why you just take everything they say at face value. I have some questions. So welcome. I would like to say also thank you to Randy Wallen. Randy, I missed you yesterday. We had a beautiful wedding at our church yesterday. I did not see Mr. Randy there, but it was so lovely. It was just it was a Christmas. All the Christmas decorations were up, and then the wedding was beautiful, and it was just everything was just this joyful feeling. It was the kind of wedding where you cry. I cried because it was just meaningful. I mean, it was touching and it was meaningful. And I've gotten to that point where if a wedding is not a Christian wedding, I don't really know why they're getting married. I know I sound like such a snob, but I'm being serious. Sometimes I just don't understand, like, what's the purpose? If you don't believe in the underlying meaning of it, like where it came from and the purpose of it and this commitment to God and this vow to God and all of your friends and family and the vows that you're making according to scripture to one another. Like I'm not sure why you're doing it. So maybe somebody can explain that in a way that makes sense to me. I have my suspicions about why. I think I view it as this cultural remnant of Christianity that still exists, but a lot of people participate in it even though they're not Christians. And I don't know. I think that's why we have over 50% divorce rate now, because it's just sort of it's the skeleton of a ritual, and we've drained it of all of the meaning. And so this was not like that yesterday. This was a very meaningful, purposeful, beautiful wedding, and I'm happy I got to be there. Okay, Randy says, sorry, Randy, If you decide to go hands-on or deploy a weapon, you have a greater than 0% chance of injury or death, incarceration, or civil damages. Even if you avoid these, there is a moral component as well. Yes, you're talking about when a person is using force as a means of self-defense and trying to protect others. So this is a good comment to start it off with. I've seen many people who I follow and respect have said, look at what they're doing to Daniel Penny. Look at what they're doing to Daniel Penny and how they're persecuting this man. Why would anybody stand up? Why would anybody try and help their neighbor or passersby who they see in harm's way? How can a man be expected to be a hero or to be a protector and a defender if the force of the law is going to be used unfairly against him for doing so, if he's going to be persecuted and made an example of for doing so? And I do think those people have a point, but what I would say in response to that is that's your duty regardless. I think it's your duty to do the right thing regardless of whether you live in a corrupt society or not. I don't think we're not gonna change society if we all refrain from doing the right thing, if we all stop telling the truth, if we all stop intervening, if we see something awful happening to someone else. I don't think we're gonna change society by all becoming cowards. So I understand the point, and I don't blame anyone who says, "Hey, I'm never stepping in." I don't blame it. I understand it. I just for those who can and are able to and willing to, I think it's a higher calling to continue to do the right thing, even in a corrupt, upside down world that's going to try and punish you for doing so. That's going to try and punish you for speaking the truth. That's going to try and censor you. That's going to try and cancel you. That's going to try and use the force of law to persecute you. If, like in the case of Daniel Penny, you do something to protect the people around you. So hats off to this man. He is a hero, and I'm very happy, as I said, that he's been acquitted, but he never should have been charged. Just having to go through the expense, the it's traumatic, I'm sure, to be charged with something like this, to not know if you're going to go away to prison for the rest of your life or not, to be convicted as a murderer for standing up and helping people. Um, the fact that he was put through this persecution is wrong. And what I would like to see is justice for him, justice for Daniel Penny for being put through this when he never, ever should have been charged, according to the laws in New York. Um, I've got one more here from Randy. I'm going to read it in case it relates to this. Thank you, Randy, for the super chat for $10. Says, in real life, one must make a decision as to what situations and on whose behalf they will engage well in advance. Don't make this decision lightly. It's too consequential to play John Wayne. I absolutely agree. That's why I said I'm not going to quibble. I'm not going to quibble with people about what their choice is. I'm just saying always I err on the side of not being a coward, and depending on the situation, I'm not blanket calling everything cowardly or not. It depends on context. So I agree with you. Okay. Yes, wicked psych. The prosecutor was an activist, and that should not be allowed. Absolutely. So I want to show you just a comparison. If you're here from the left, before I lose you, how about this? Let me share this right up top, because this is a comparison that you may not know about. I didn't know about this. So I saw this tweet, and then I looked up this case. This is a tweet from End Wokeness, and he says, Daniel Penny, 24 years old, put a homeless felon in a fatal chokehold to stop him from attacking people on his New York train. Bail was set at $200,000. Appeal was rejected. Okay. Here's another case, happened around the same time. This one happened last year. Jordan Williams, age 20, very similar in age, stabbed and killed a homeless man to stop him from attacking people on his New York train. Bail, $0. Charges dropped. Didn't bring charges. Here's these two different men, two different outcomes. They charged Daniel Penny on the left. They didn't charge Jordan Williams on the right. Now, I'm not saying that they should have charged Jordan Williams. I don't think they should have. I think they made the right decision to drop the charges. But why did they continue? Why did they continue with the charges against Daniel Penny on the left? I would argue it has everything to do with race, that they're activist, racist, corrupt politicians and prosecutors there in New York City who are beholden to a racist ideology, to woke ideology. And they looked at the optics and they said, oh, it's a white man and a black person who was killed. Therefore, we're going to press charges. Because they made all the big how do we know it was about race? Because they couldn't stop talking about it. Because that's all they effing talked about. That's all they freaking talked about. It doesn't matter the race of the person on the train who was threatening to kill people and said he didn't care if he died and he didn't care if he went to jail for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter the race of the person. It didn't matter that Jordan Neely was black. It didn't matter at all. It didn't matter that the person who bravely took him down and tried to subdue him was white. And by the way, it wasn't just a white guy. Daniel Penny didn't act alone. You can see in the video footage, there's another guy helping him who's black. There's a black guy helping to hold Jordan Neely down. If you're on the left, you may not even know this. You can see him in the video. Race had nothing to do with it. This was about the courage to do the right thing and to put yourself in harm's way to try and protect women and children and others on the train who are being threatened. And race didn't matter in either of these cases until they got to the prosecution state, until the law got involved, until woke got involved. And what does woke say? What do all the politicians say? What did AOC say about Daniel Penny? Well, they couldn't stop talking about race. They noticed race. Race had a lot to do for them. I would argue that they are the racists, that they are the ones who look at this and all they see is race, and they make decisions based on race, which is a racist thing to do. They decide to charge, to move forward with prosecution based on whether or not the defendant is white or black, based on whether or not the victim is white or black. Absolutely, they're motivated by it. They are racist. So these two cases, as I said, you may not have heard of it. Here's the case of Jordan Williams, the one that's mentioned in that tweet. Charges dropped. This is from Thursday, June 29th, 2023. It's an ABC News article. So this is from like a year and a half ago. Charges dropped against man in deadly stabbing of homeless man on subway. Charges have been dismissed against Jordan Williams, who was charged with fatally stabbing a 36-year-old homeless man on the subway. Our office conducted an impartial and thorough investigation of this tragic case, which included review of multiple videos and interviews with all available witnesses, like they did with Jordan Neely. And that evidence was fairly presented to a grand jury, said Brooklyn District Attorney spokesperson. Today, the charges against Jordan Williams have been dismissed, like they should have been dismissed for Daniel Penny. Under New York law, a person is justified in using deadly physical force when they reasonably believe it is necessary to use such force to defend themselves or others from imminent use of deadly or unlawful physical force. We knew this from the beginning. I think I covered it on this channel back when it happened. We knew this from the beginning, according to not just Daniel Penny, but all the other witnesses on the train who testified, who testified to the police and to the news stations at the time, and were quoted as talking about the threats that Jordan Neely was making, the threat that he posed, where a reasonable person, in fact, many reasonable people on that train, believed that he was an imminent threat, where he repeatedly threatened to kill people and said he didn't care if he went to jail and he didn't care if he died. I'll continue with this. Williams, 20, was charged with manslaughter and criminal possession of a weapon in the death of 36-year-old De Victor Udrago on a J train June 13th. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office initially asked for $100,000 in bail, but the judge told Williams, "I have every reason to believe you will fight this case." Investigators reviewed video of the homeless man who was killed, who's believed to be homeless, harassing subway riders. So he was harassing subway riders. This is apparently what led to a fight with Williams before the deadly stabbing. An attorney for Williams said it is a clear case of self-defense. Police said Williams did not stay at the scene, but was taken into custody several subway stops away with his female friend at the Chauncey Street station, still on the same train. Police say the folding knife that he used in the murder was recovered in his possession. One witness told Eyewitness News that Williams went too far. Quote, it's certain that something he didn't start. It's certainly something he didn't start or would have probably been involved in if it weren't for, the guy who was killed being the aggressor, the witness said. But you can't kill someone just because, they started a fight with you. Hey, yeah, you can. Actually, you can. According to New York law, you can use physical force to stop an imminent physical threat. You can. But isn't it interesting here that they had one witness who said, I think it went too far, and they still dismissed the charges against Jordan Williams. They still didn't go forward with it. But they went forward with it with Daniel Penny. I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to show you some disturbing reactions to the acquittal. So, here's the headline from NBC News. Daniel Penny found not guilty in chokehold death of Jordan Neely. Also, here was one other difference between the two very similar cases is that in the case of Jordan Williams, where they didn't bring charges, he had a weapon. He had a knife. Daniel Penny didn't have a knife. He used a chokehold. He subdued without a weapon. He did use physical force. Both resulted in a death. They didn't bring charges against Jordan Williams, who used a knife, but they did against Daniel Penny, who had no weapon. Go figure, right? Found not guilty in chokehold death of Jordan Neely. The jury acquitted Penny of criminally negligent homicide after previously deadlocking on the more serious charge of manslaughter. And I'll stop here for a second and say there was speculation that they were trying to shoehorn the jury into finding Penny guilty on at least one of the charges. And I say this because the jury was deadlocked. They were hung on the charge of manslaughter. So, which is the more serious charge. It was a hung jury. And so normally what would happen at that point is, according to the juror instructions, they're not allowed to actually debate the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide if they were hung on the charge of manslaughter. It actually said they had to find him not guilty on the first charge of manslaughter to be able to debate the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. But because they were hung on the manslaughter case, and then what would happen is, well, okay, they're hung on the manslaughter case, therefore they're not allowed to debate the next charge. So it is thrown out, becomes a mistrial, basically, and then the DA has to decide if they're going to go through the expense and the time of charging him again and having a second trial. That's normally what would happen. And so this was unusual, though, because the prosecution, after the jury came back and said they were hung on the manslaughter charge, instead of saying, okay, it's a mistrial, the prosecution asked the judge, hey, we're going to can we dismiss the manslaughter charges? We just want to dismiss those now. Now that we've already tried him for it and they're hung and they can't come to a decision, can we dismiss those charges? And can you have this jury go ahead and debate the criminally negligent homicide charges without having to have any trial? Can we just have them debate those now? And the defense for Daniel Penny said, no, let's not do this. Let's not do this. It seems like you're trying to shoehorn a guilty verdict on some charge. You're trying to get what you can get. And the defense said, let's not do this. And the judge sided with the prosecution and said, okay, we're throwing out the manslaughter charges. Jury, go back to the room and, try to come up with a verdict for criminally negligent homicide. And all indications pointed to this judge really wanted them to come back with some kind of guilty verdict. So I didn't have a lot of optimism going into this, and I'm really happy that I was wrong. I'm really happy that the jury found him a half of Daniel Penny, because that didn't work. The jury came back and said, not guilty. Not guilty of criminally negligent homicide, the lesser charge, which is amazing. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there was some speculation about how this was unusual, and speculation that they were trying to get any kind of guilty verdict that they could. John, activist judges cause more chaos. Yes. Yes, they do. I'll just read just a little of this. Daniel Penny was acquitted Monday. Today, of criminally negligent homicide in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely, a 30-year-old homeless man with a history of mental illness whose final moments on a New York City subway train were captured on bystander video that set off weeks of protests at these stupid activist protests and drew national attention. Can you imagine being such a loser that you're out there protesting that a guy who was threatening to kill people and who had been arrested 43 previous times and charged with assaulting several different people, including a 60-something-year-old woman, punching her in the face and breaking her nose. Like, you're out there in the streets, like, protesting that a courageous man stood up and did something and protected people? What a loser. But there were protests. The puppets did what they were told. Because you know why? Remember back when this happened? Because the politicians like AOC and everyone, they were making all these it was racism. We've got to protest. Get out in the streets. Stand up for Jordan Neely. Stand up for this guy who was attacking people and assaulting people and threatening to assault people, had a history of assaulting people. Stand up for him. Not the Marine who actually protected folks. So gross. So yeah, there were weeks of disgusting protests back then. Excuse me one second. I gotta have a little bit of coffee. Here we go. The decision on the 5th day of deliberations came after the jury deadlocked Friday on the more serious charge of manslaughter, leading the judge to dismiss that charge, which is what the prosecution asked for, by the way. Penny faced up to 4 years in prison. 4 years! Gosh, 4 years. As the jury foreperson read the not guilty verdict, some observers in the courtroom applauded. Others began to audibly sob and yell, including Neely's father, Andre Zachary, who was escorted out. This father, by the way, you should know, abandoned his son. This father is looking for a payday now. He's saying he's going to he's going to press charges in a civil court against Daniel Penny, and that he misses his son who he hadn't seen in years and years, who he abandoned and who he did nothing for when he was dealing with mental illness and drug addiction and multiple police arrests and all kinds of trouble. This father who was completely estranged from his son. Some of that sobbing and yelling is probably, your heart convicting yourself, sir, of being an absent dad. Quote, "This is America. That is the sound of black pain," one person said outside the courtroom in Lower Manhattan to the reaction. I'm so sick of this woke crap. I'm so sick of it. What does black pain sound like? Does it sound different than white pain? Does it sound different than Latino pain or Asian pain? Is it more sacred? Is it more important? Is it different? It's not different. I'm so sick of this racist stuff, like putting this racist crap in everything. This trial had nothing to do with race, except for it became about race because of the racists who wouldn't stop talking about race, because of people like this, talking about black pain. It's just pain. Chants of "no justice, no peace" could be heard echoing from outside. Yeah. You know who needs justice is Daniel Penny. The case divided people in New York and beyond, in some cases along political and racial lines. Yeah, that's what you guys wanted, media. That's what you wanted. You got it. It shouldn't have mattered at all, just like in the Jordan Williams case. Jordan Williams, who they didn't press charges. It didn't matter. The media didn't make a big deal about it. They didn't say, this black man killed this homeless person because he's black. They didn't say that. AOC didn't make statements. Nobody did. Nobody was divided over it because of race, because you didn't tell them to be. It continues. Neely was black. Penny is white. And who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Some people viewed Penny as callous and his actions as criminal on the day he encountered Neely. Let's just be clear here, audience. The actions that were criminal that day were Jordan Neely's actions. Jordan Neely, who was a criminal, by the way, career criminal. They viewed him as callous and his actions criminal. The day he encountered Neely, who had been shouting and acting erratically when he boarded a subway train in Manhattan on May 1st, 2023. Others contend that Penny was selfless. Yeah, he was. He put his life on the line, and he put, and I don't just mean in terms of his physical safety in that moment of doing something to protect those people on the train, but I also mean his life. Look, they tried to put him in jail for 4 years. You live in a country, and especially if you live in New York City, you live in a state of governance where it's corrupt, it's upside down, and if you're a good Samaritan, they can throw the book at you, or they're going to try to. You can be prosecuted. So it was selfless in the true sense of the word to do what he did, to step in and to try to do something. Others contend that Penny was selfless in his attempt to protect fellow passengers. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg said he respected the jury's verdict. The jury deliberated for about an hour on the criminally negligent homicide charge after about 4 days spent considering the manslaughter charge. Their lengthy deliberation and the totality of the facts and the evidence underscored why this case was put in front of a jury of Mr. Penny's peers, Bragg said in a statement. He's trying to justify persecuting this guy, Daniel Penny, bringing charges that he never should have brought. The anonymous jury, made up of 7 women and 5 men, were told before they began deliberating that they had to come to a unanimous decision on the top charge of manslaughter. This is what I mentioned before, in the second degree, manslaughter in the second degree, before moving on to consider the criminally negligent homicide. But Judge Maxwell Wiley changed that order Friday after jurors twice sent a note saying they could not reach an agreement. The judge had also instructed jurors to decide whether Penny's actions caused Neely's death, and if so, whether he had acted recklessly and in an unjustified manner. Do you know who acted recklessly that day? Jordan Neely. Do you know put people in harm's way? Jordan Neely. Before he encountered Penny, Neely, a former Michael Jackson impersonator, ranted about being hungry and thirsty and said he wanted to return to jail and didn't care if he lived or died. Witnesses testified. Do you notice anything right here? Do you notice anything right here? Multiple witnesses. Remember back when we first covered this in 2023? They left out something very important. Yeah, he said he was hungry. He said he was thirsty. Yes, remember that. He said he wanted to go back to jail. He didn't care if he went back to jail, didn't care if he died. He said all of that. What did they leave out? What did they leave out? He said he was going to kill every effing body. He was going to kill everybody on this train. He said that multiple times. So weird, NBC News. So weird you'd leave that part out. I'm laughing because of how ridiculous this oversight is. And you know it's intentional. It's kind of an important fact. If you were to read this and you knew nothing about this case, you'd be like, well, why did he kill that homeless guy? All he was doing was saying he was hungry and wanted to go back to jail. Why do you think he was a threat? I don't know. Maybe because he was threatening to kill people. What? Incredible. Just the media there's like no bottom for how much they will continue to shock us. There's no bottom for how low they'll go to paint the narrative that they want. I'll continue. Penny, 26, a former Marine and Long Island native, placed Neely in a chokehold that prosecutors said lasted almost 6 minutes. By the way, at the time, they were trying to spin a narrative and they were lying and they kept putting out there that it was almost 15 minutes and like going way beyond what it actually was. At least they got it down closer to what Penny and the witnesses think it was here. They got it down to 6, but originally they were spinning it out of control. 15-minute chokehold, which is impossible, by the way, because the stops on the train don't last 15 minutes. I forget what it was. I'll have to pull it up. I've got it in my links here, but it's like 4 minutes, 5 minutes or something between those stops. So there's no way. A New York City medical examiner ruled that Neely died from compression to his neck as a result of the chokehold. Neely's uncle, Christopher Neely, said that he was, quote, taken aback as the verdict was announced because he thought the jury would at least convict him on the lesser charge. Yeah, I bet you did. That's what the prosecutor thought too. That's what the judge thought too. Quote, at least give him a charge because it should be some type of penalty that should have been handed down to Daniel Penny, period. Wow. What about your nephew? How about those 43 arrests and all those different assaults that they just like let him out of jail for repeatedly? It's kind of weird. If you attack that many people, maybe there should be some kind of penalty that should be handed down. Just saying. He continued, they gave Daniel Penny no penalty, and I feel like the jury gave up on us, he said. Dante Mills, a lawyer representing Neely's family, said at a news conference that he was disheartened by the verdict Monday as supporters held up a picture of Neely dressed as Michael Jackson. Mills asked that Neely's death have meaning and urged that others, instead of becoming physical with someone who may be hungry, offer them food. Again, okay, whether or not he's hungry is beside the point. That's not why he was put into a chokehold, because he was hungry. You disgusting liar. What would you suggest for someone who is threatening to kill people on a train? What would you suggest in that case? That's why he was put in the chokehold, not because he was hungry. It's just off the charts, the manipulation here. Quote, he had a muffin in his pocket, Mills said, of what police later discovered in Neely's jacket. Jordan just wanted someone to acknowledge him on the train, but instead he was choked to death. But he just wanted someone to acknowledge him by shouting that he was going to kill them. Lawyers for Penny could not immediately. If I sound angry here, it's because I am. It's because of the gaslighting. That's the correct use of the term here. The gaslighting where they try to make you feel crazy, like you live in an upside down world, like you can't trust your lying eyes or your deceiving ears. And the way they edit out information on purpose so that any person who has a superficial knowledge of this case who reads this comes away thinking like, oh, this innocent guy, he was just murdered on a train because he's black and because this white racist guy murdered him because he's hungry. That's the story they're telling you. What a ridiculous story. What a ridiculous story. And I have so much disgust for the media, and I have so much disgust for this lawyer, for example, who's representing the Neely family. I have so much disgust for them for trying to manipulate and lie to people that way and gaslight people. He just wanted to eat, but he was choked to death. Lawyers for Penny could not immediately be reached for comment about the verdict, but had earlier expressed concern Monday to the judge that the jury could be influenced by the demonstrators chanting coming from outside the courthouse. During the trial, Penny's attorneys told jurors that he stepped in because he believed that Neely might attack other passengers and he intended only to restrain him until police arrived, which Penny also told police. Duh, of course. They also argued that Neely was not killed by the chokehold and that it was impossible to measure how much pressure Penny had applied. A forensic pathologist hired by the defense testified that Neely died from a combination of his schizophrenia, synthetic marijuana, sickle cell trait, and the struggle from being in Penny's restraint. But the medical examiner who performed the autopsy on Neely, Dr. Cynthia Harris, told jurors it was her medical opinion, quote, that there are no alternative reasonable explanations for his death, and that those proposed by the defense were so improbable that it stands shoulder to shoulder with impossibility, end quote. During cross-examination, one of Penny's attorneys, Stephen Razor, sought to cast doubt on Harris's testimony about how she and her colleagues had come to a unanimous decision as to Neely's cause of death. Razor suggested that they had failed to consider all the facts before making that determination. He revisited that claim in his closing arguments last week. Quote, I submit to you there was a rush to judgment based on something other than medical science, he told jurors. Yeah, there was, because there was a lot of politics around this. There's a lot of politicians weighing in at the time. Just like with Derek Chauvin. The case also spurred debates about safety within the city's subway system and failures in addressing homelessness and mental illness. Here's ding, ding, ding. There you go. There's one. Everything you're doing for homelessness. Oh, let me scratch that. Let me say most of what you're doing for homelessness is failing New York City and San Francisco and Los Angeles. All these big Democrat cities and Chicago, because you're not actually providing incentives for people to get out of homelessness. You're providing incentives for them to stay homeless. That's what your policies are doing. It's kind of like in San Francisco where they give out the free needles to drug addicts. Like, here, let us give you needles to shoot up with. Why are they going to stop shooting up? You're aiding and abetting. You're incentivizing that behavior. You're not disincentivizing it. New York City has failed on the homelessness issue. They've also failed on the mental illness issue. And it's so funny whenever we see stuff like this and you see politicians talking about, every once in a while you'll see them talking about mental illness, and it's sort of like, yeah, bring back the mental hospitals. What happened? That is a big problem. Failures in addressing homelessness and mental illness, both of which Neely had struggled with. Jumaine Williams, a Black Democrat who is New York City's public advocate, was among those who questioned why police let Penny go after questioning him at precinct hours after Neely's killing. Why they let him go? He just used self-defense to protect himself and other passengers on the train. He and another passenger, a Black passenger whose name you guys never mention. We know his name, but you guys never mention. Why'd you let him go? He did something good. New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, also a Democrat, said that Neely, quote, had been murdered, end quote. Prominent Republicans like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Matt Gaetz praised Penny and promised a fundraiser for his legal fund, which raised more than $3 million. His defense team includes Thomas Kenniff, a Republican who ran unsuccessfully for Manhattan District Attorney in 2021. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance said on X in response to the verdict that justice was done in this case. It was a scandal that Penny was ever prosecuted in the first place. I agree. The only thing I disagree on is justice has not been done. I think he deserves justice for what they put him through. That's just me. Prosecutors did not dispute that Neely's actions on the train scared many of the passengers, or that he was on synthetic cannabinoids, which were found in his system. He was on marijuana. In her opening statement, Daphne Yoren, an assistant prosecutor with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, said that Neely had, quote, demanded to be seen, and that despite his not having touched anyone and not having displayed a weapon or threatened to use one, many people in the subway car threatened to use one. Do you see what she did there with that language? He threatened to kill people. But I'm sure they feel like the justified in telling this lie and in planting a false impression, because they can always say, well, he didn't threaten to kill people with a knife or with a gun or with a, weapon. With a weapon. He had not threatened to use a weapon. Yeah, but he threatened to kill people. He threatened to kill people. How many people want to wait and see what weapon it is? Many people in the subway car were frightened of what he might do, she said. This is the prosecutor at least admitting that. She has said that Penny's, quote, initial intent was even laudable, end quote, but that he was reckless when he continued to choke Neely even after he posed no threat, including after the train doors had opened at the next station and passengers could exit. For some of that time, she said, and video showed, 2 other men helped restrain Neely. One of those men testified that he believed Penny had held the chokehold for too long. At times, Joran said he even ignored the pleas of bystanders to let Neely go. In her closing argument, Joran said that, quote, no one had to die, end quote, and that Penny was not justified in his use of physical deadly force. Yes, he was. And again, he didn't know. He wasn't trying to kill the guy. He was trying to subdue him. He wasn't trying to kill him. He was trying to subdue him. And in that, unless you're in that situation, I think these people, all these people commenting on, oh, you should have let up here, or you should have let up there. You're not putting your life on the line. You're not the one risking your life and your future, putting him in the chokehold. Are you somehow an expert now on what amount of force? Oh, I would have done it this way. It reminds me of people who, like when you see these reports of sometimes like police killings, where you see people who've never held a gun in their life say, why did the cop shoot him when he was advancing on the police officer with a knife? Why did the cop shoot him in the chest? Why didn't he shoot him in the leg and just wound him? Why did he have to kill him? I know he was charging the police officer with a knife, but why did he have to kill him? He could have just shot him in the leg. Person who's never picked up a gun ever. It's what it makes me think of. No one had to die. Okay, Joran, how many times have you had to put a chokehold on someone to subdue them from hurting other people? You obviously cannot kill someone because they are crazy and ranting and looking menacing. No, you can't. But according to New York law, and the jury agreed, and the prosecutors agreed when they chose to dismiss charges against Jordan Williams, who did the same thing, but with a knife. Jordan Williams, remember, stabbed a homeless man to death who was threatening people on a train. We don't even know if he was threatening. It said he was harassing. In this case, this guy was definitely threatening people. And the New York law says, yes, you can use force, even deadly force, if you are in danger of imminent threat, physical threat, or if other people are. So I want to scroll down to this part. The defense attorneys referred to Penny as Danny. They said he put his life on the line. Yeah, he did. And stepped up in the absence of police. But Joran challenged the portrayal of Penny as a self-sacrificing and benevolent subway rider. In her opening statement, she said that Penny failed to acknowledge Neely's humanity. What? This is where you can be a criminal, a repeat criminal who's assaulted old women and young women and, punched people in the face and just, have a history of 43 arrests for this kind of disorderly conduct and assault and stuff. And you can be a career criminal like this, and the New York is going to say that your humanity needs to be acknowledged. They're going to err on the side. They're going to lionize you and make statues for you and hold you up as some martyr and some victim. If you're only if you're Black, first of all, only. And then if you are a good Samaritan who does put your life on the line, who risks everything to step in and protect the passengers on a train, the people around you who are being threatened by this crazy person. If you're white, they're going to charge you, set bail at $200,000, try and take away your freedom and your liberty and put you behind bars, and they're going to demonize you and call you a racist because you're white. They're going to call you a racist. They're going to try and destroy you in any way they can. That's the upside down world of New York City. That's what's crazy. So Penny failed to acknowledge his humanity. But is that illegal, by the way? If that were true, is that illegal? No? Then why don't you shut up? What are you talking about? This is some woke speak making it into the he failed to acknowledge his humanity. Okay. First of all, that's a subjective opinion. That's not objective. That's subjective opinion, and it's not illegal, even if it were true. That doesn't make any. He failed to properly take credit for his white privilege. He had some white fragility unexamined. If it pleases the court, I would like to enter into evidence Daniel Penny's toxic mansplaining. Like, what? His toxic masculinity was off the charts, Your Honor. His white privilege was at a level we've never seen before. That's just what? This is not a crime. This is like Kafka-esque. You just like make up something so dumb. Okay, she said that Penny failed to acknowledge Neely's humanity. Need we point out that if you are threatening to kill people, I would say that at the very least you are not acknowledging their humanity. You're threatening their lives mean nothing to you. You're threatening to kill them so you can go back to jail. Their lives mean nothing to you. I would say you're failing to acknowledge their humanity, but okay. She continued that threat in her closing argument, playing a video of Penny twice referring to Neely as a crackhead in an interview with police and telling jurors that he never asked about Neely's condition. Yeah, I might not if I were put in that situation, if I had to do something like that, if I can try to imagine something like that, yeah, I may not be asking about how that guy, like what happened. I may not. Quote, there's something else that is glaringly missing from his statement. Any regret, any remorse, any self-reflection. What is this moralizing, upside down moralizing witch hunt here? Daniel Penny didn't have regret for what he did. What about Neely? I mean, again, it's upside down. Who's the aggressor here, isn't it? She said, she added, quote, he never expresses any sorrow about the men's death. He's not, so he doesn't have the appropriate emotions. Got it. Where's the crime? Where's the crime? He doesn't have the appropriate emotions that you want him to have. Or at least he doesn't have them in public where you can see it. During deliberations, jurors asked to rewatch bystander videos of Penny restraining Neely, responding officers, body camera videos, and video of Penny's subsequent interview with 2 police detectives at a precinct. They also asked to rehear the medical examiner's testimony about issuing a death certificate before Neely's full toxicology reports were completed. They also asked the judge to read back the definitions of recklessness and criminal negligence and to have the definitions in writing. Daniel Penny chose not to testify. During the trial, jurors heard from more than 40 witnesses, subway passengers who witnessed Penny restrain Neely, police officers who responded to the scene, a Marine Corps instructor who taught Penny various chokeholds, and 2 pathologists, a psychiatric expert, and 6 character witnesses who included 2 Marines, Penny's mother, and one of his sisters. Okay, on Wednesday, Neely's father sued Penny. So this nightmare is not over for Daniel Penny. For being a good Samaritan, for being a hero, for doing the right thing, for risking his life to protect people, the persecution's not over yet. This guy, Neely's father, who abandoned his son, Father of the Year award, coming out of the woodwork, going to try and get his payday. And who cares what it does to Daniel Penny, right? To have to go through this. Who cares? Neely's father doesn't care. He's accusing him of negligent contact, assault, and battery. The civil suit was filed in New York State Supreme Court, a trial of a court in New York State. So that's, the nightmare's not over for him entirely. I'm going to remove this for a minute just to catch up on, oh, hey guys. Hey, Movies America. Movies America, some sarcasm. All he was doing was trying to brighten everyone's day by saying he was going to kill them. Right? But that's, I mean, it's not that far removed, Movies America, from what they're saying. They're like, he was just hungry. All he was doing was trying to be hungry and he got choked for it. He was not that was not why he got choked. Torgo the White, member for 7 months. Thank you, Torgo, for the support. Says Suffa, black embezzlers matter, Suffa. I can't do that. I know some people who can do the Suffa thing. I can't do it like the kids do. Suffa, black embezzlers matter, Suffa. I can't do it. But thank you. I'm not very good with impressions, Torgo the White. ADL 1992 for $4.99. Good to see you, ADL. He says, I have complex feelings about psych wards and I cannot explain it in a few words here, unfortunately. No worries. And it's a very complex issue, and I'm sure, you could have hours worth of conversation about it. And I know people I know some people, a couple people have been hospitalized against their will, who I think it was the best choice. Is it always the best choice? Can it be abused? Yes, absolutely. But are there some instances where people are, I would say, reasonably presenting evidence and symptoms that they are a danger to themselves and others? Yes, that's also true. So I hear you though, ADL. Randy Wallen for $5. Thank you, Randy. Says after the higher charge was dropped, the jury verdict on the lower charge can only be seen as an FU to the judge and prosecutors, right? Because think this through. If they were hung on the first charge, I was really thinking there's no way they're going to be unanimously not guilty on the second lesser charge. That's what I was thinking, Randy. So something seems to have changed. Maybe they caught on to what was happening with the prosecution, saying like, hey, let's continue, and then it seemed that the judge was giving them heavy-handed instructions on the second charge. I think maybe that people on the jury felt condescended to, as if they were supposed to deliver something. They were being told to deliver something. And you're right. Maybe it was an FU. Who knows? Okay. I want to show you some video of Daniel Penny. And wait a minute, before I show you that, I'm just going to tell you a couple things about Daniel. I had to go back and pull up some of these old articles. Here we go. This is a good one. This is one of those listicle things. Daniel Penny, whenever there's a crime and immediately there's these sites like Heavy that come out with like 5 things you need to know. So I had to dig back through because all the news today is about the acquittal. I had to find these. Daniel Penny, five fast facts that you need to know. And they have some of the still frames from the video footage here. By the way, lefties, remember the black guy who helped to subdue Jordan Neely? There he is in both of these still frames. Again, you probably never even heard about him. There were 2 guys that helped. But you probably never heard about that at all. There you go. Let me just scroll down. Look at this. This is how New York Mayor Eric Adams talked about it at the time. Again, this got so much media attention, and all the powers that be were basically right off the bat painting Daniel Penny as a racist. Why? Because of his race. That's it. They're the racists. They're the racists if they look at somebody and they say, oh, this person's white, it must have been racism. That makes you a racist. If you don't have evidence of racism and you're just saying it, if you're just saying it because of the race of the person, that's ding, 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 you're the racist. Red flag alert, you're the racist. And they were doing that right off the bat, calling Daniel Penny a racist and saying that he did this because he's white and because Jordan Neely's black, which makes 0 sense. Oh, I'm going to risk my life because of racism. Like, what? No, it's because this guy was threatening to kill people. New York Mayor Eric Adams, a former police officer, told CNN, our hearts go out to Jordan Neely's family, he said, calling it a terrible incident. This was AOC at the time. She tweeted, Jordan Neely was murdered. But because Jordan was houseless, this is woke lexicon. This is woke dictionary here. The woke, my old ideology that I was in for 20 years, they try and change the definition of words, and they try and create new words and force those on people, and they do this just like all cults do to try and control thought. That's how they control people. So, like all cults, they come up with new words and they change the definition of existing words. And so this is one of their manipulations that they've been pushing for a couple years now, is they want to even more narrowly, more tightly control the thought of their followers, of the people in the cult, by telling them they're always coming up with words that are now like problematic. They can't use anymore. So they say homeless is problematic now. You can't use homeless, must use houseless. It's just about control. It's just about control and having all the sheep in that cult in a totally paranoid state where they're constantly trying to make sure they don't step in it, step in the wrong trap, depending on what language they use. And so they're constantly tap dancing and running everything through a filter and making sure they're not saying one of the new problematic words. So they look ideologically pure and they don't get thrown out of the cult or attacked or mobbed or made an example of or shamed. So this is one of those new words. It hasn't really caught on yet, but they're trying really hard. So she uses it. Why? Because she's one of the cult leaders. She's one of the high priests and priestesses of the movement. So AOC said Jordan Neely was murdered, but because Jordan was houseless, and crying for food in a time when the city is raising rents and stripping services to militarize itself, while many in power demonize the poor, the murderer gets prosecuted, or the murderer gets protected, she says, with passive headlines and no charges. It's disgusting. Look at what she did here. This is a reversal of the truth, an absolute reversal of the truth. Daniel Penny was not protected. Daniel Penny didn't get the benefit of passive headlines like Jordan Williams did. Jordan Williams, the black man, who around the same time committed the same act, stabbed a homeless guy to death on a train, a homeless guy who was harassing people, and they didn't press charges. Jordan Williams had passive headlines. Daniel Penny did not. He did not get protected. They did not dismiss charges for him. She says no charges. No, they brought the charges, and they also rejected his appeal. You tried to ruin his life. You, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, were a part of that. This was at the time from the law firm. Penny's law firm said, quote, when Mr. Neely began aggressively threatening Daniel Penny and the other passengers, Daniel, with the help of others, acted to protect themselves until help arrived. Daniel never intended to harm Mr. Neely and could not have foreseen his untimely death. Yes. Duh. So here are a couple of facts about him. I'm going to scroll down to this part. Okay. Daniel Penny is a former Marine who received 7 medals and was a sergeant at Camp Lejeune, reports say. According to the Daily Mail, Penny served in the 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines, 2nd Marine Division as a sergeant in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, but left the service in June of 2021. He had served 4 years and was the recipient of 7 medals. He was deployed between December 2017 and July 2019 in the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit across the Mediterranean. There was something else I saw here. Oh, here we go. This is him in high school. Daniel Penny was given an MVP as a high school lacrosse player. So a little more about his history. A 2015 photo shows Daniel Penny receiving an award from Barbara Harcourt, who is described in the caption as a descendant of Sergeant Major Daniel Daly. The photo caption said, she's giving the MVP award to Daniel Penny of West Islip High School after the 2nd annual Dan Daly Cup in Uniondale, New York, June 24th. Team Valor and Team Virtue are made up of the top lacrosse players in Long Island, competing to win in honor of 2-time Medal of Honor recipient Sergeant Major Daniel Daly. Just a little more about this guy's history. You know what he doesn't have in his past? 43 arrests for assaulting and attacking people, punching old ladies in the face, attacking children on the subway. He doesn't have all the stuff that Jordan Neely has in his past. And yet, the way he's treated by the media compared to Jordan Neely. Therese, oh sure, roll out the baby pictures. I didn't find any of him. I'm sure you could find the ones of Jordan Neely very easily. I didn't find any of Daniel Penny. It's harder to find the kind of humanizing stuff. Imagine that of Daniel Penny. It's very easy to find the stuff that humanizes Jordan Neely. I want to show you some of the responses. Wait. Before the responses, I promised you video of Daniel Penny. Here we go. So this is him a year ago talking about the charges, talking about what happened that day. And you may not have heard him on camera. I always think it helps to hear directly from people and you get a sense of who they are and what they're saying. So here we go.
The Marine veteran charged in the subway chokehold death of Jordan Neely is speaking out.
The law firm representing Daniel Penny released several videos of Penny recounting some of the events of that day. CBS 2's Lisa Rosner has the new videos, and she also spoke with Penny's attorney.
A man came on, stumbled on. He appeared to be on drugs. The doors closed, and he ripped his jacket off and threw it at the people sitting down to my left.
In newly released videos from Daniel Penny's lawyers, 24-year-old Penny says he first encountered Jordan Neely a few stops after he stepped on the Uptown F train.
The three main threats that he repeated over and over was, I'm going to kill you, I'm prepared to go to jail for life, and I'm willing to die. We were all scared. Mr. Neely was yelling in these passengers' faces. I was trying to keep him on the ground until the police came.
Penny, a Marine vet, was captured on now infamous video holding 30-year-old Neely in a chokehold on the F train near the Broadway Lafayette station. The medical examiner determined Neely's death to be a homicide, sparking protests for weeks after Penny was originally questioned by police and let go. He has since been charged with second-degree manslaughter and is out of jail on $100,000 bond.
And then some people say that this was about race, which is absolutely ridiculous. I didn't see a black man threatening passengers. I saw a man threatening passengers.
Yeah.
It's a lot of whom were people of color.
He also said the chokehold was only about 5 minutes instead of 15 minutes, which has been alleged by some. Penny's lawyers declined to make him available for an interview. Why?
So I just wanted you to hear from him because I form a lot of my opinion, not just on what people say, but on how they carry themselves and what kind of signals they're giving off and what kind of gut check I get on them and everything. And everything that this coming from this guy, including his past and the way he talks, is very sincere, authentic guy, good guy who just wanted to do the right thing. I don't get any gross vibes off of him. I don't get any red flags or any deception vibes from him or the way he speaks or any of those tells. And so if you have not, maybe you had not seen him on camera, I just wanted you to see him talking about it. Very composed considering what he was going through. In the chat, AH says, what? No attempts on Penny's record to kidnap a 7-year-old girl. Yeah. I should show you guys in case you don't know. You know, I mentioned Jordan Neely had 43 arrests. Vivek Ramaswamy has shared. We covered this back when it happened, but this is a little succinct summary of some of the worst charges out of those 43. And in case you were not aware, here are some. In 2015, Jordan Neely kidnapped a 7-year-old girl. That was one of the charges. 2019, Jordan Neely punched a 64-year-old man in the face. In 2021, Jordan Neely slugged a 67-year-old woman in the face as she exited the subway, breaking her nose and fracturing her orbital bone. He was arrested 44 times, but never faced real justice for terrorizing New Yorkers. Yeah, so where's the justice? You know, Jordan Neely's uncle and dad talking about justice. Where's the justice for all the victims of Jordan Neely? Where's the justice for those guys? Why'd you keep putting him back on the streets when he was a threat to the public? And you say, well, he's mentally ill. Okay, then why do you keep putting this mentally ill person back on the streets when he's a threat to the public? Whether or not he's mentally ill, he's a threat to the public. Super based. gifted 20 memberships. Wow, Superbase. Thank you for the generosity. Some Christmas generosity. If you guys got a membership from Superbase, the membership fairy, make sure to say thank you. G-Man. Hey, G-Man. I got to wear your McMaga visor. It's Christmas time, so I keep wanting to wear the other stuff. But G-Man says, did Nancy Pelosi even thank Jordan Neely for his sacrifice like she did with George Floyd? If you don't wear your McMaga visor, the commies win. That's funny. I mentioned it before I even saw that. You know what? I'm going to have to wear it on Friday. I'll wear it on Friday show. I promise. We'll do that. We'll wear it. I don't know if what Nancy Pelosi said about Jordan Neely. Even though it's not her state, I assume she couldn't help herself from weighing in though. So if somebody finds an embarrassing quote of hers, like with her George Floyd quotes, let me know. Rock Lexicon for $10. Thank you, Rock Lexicon says rule of law, human rights, justice, etc. is only protected because there's an implied threat of violence against those who prey on the innocent. Not all violence is evil. Society ignores this at our peril. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. If we pretend that the aggressor, that the person making violent threats who is an imminent threat to others or a reasonably assumed imminent threat to others, if we treat them as a victim and we criminalize self-defense, then we're upside down. And as you're saying, we ignore this at our peril because we'll have nothing left but a nation full of criminals. If you lionize criminals and treat them, as sacred idols, basically, and treat heroes and men of courage like trash and persecute them, where do you think we're going to end up? Again, think about what behaviors you're incentivizing, which ones you're disincentivizing. New York City is upside down. It's upside down. It incentivizes the wrong things. It disincentivizes the right things, the good things. And Superbase for $2 says, God bless Good Samaritans. Yes. All men of courage who would stand up, who would do what Daniel Penny did and risk not just their safety, their name, their future, their freedom, their liberty, everything, especially if you're in a place like New York City, to stand up and do that and to try and protect people around him. I can't even imagine. But I'm grateful for people of that kind of character. And to go back to what Randy said earlier, it doesn't mean you should be reckless. It doesn't mean you should jump into and insert yourself in every situation trying to be a hero. It's just doing what needs to be done when it's required and nothing more than that. Okay, this is a really disappointing response. This is Hank Newsom of Black Lives Matter in New York. And I find this especially disappointing because Hank Newsom is someone who has said some things I agree with, and his mind seems to be open on some issues. And I thought, I still think maybe, I don't know. At one point, I thought he was on a path to being red-pilled. Now I'm not so sure because of this very predictable BLM kind of response that he had. So he did a press conference with the family. This is the BLM leader, Hank Newsom, in New York, and what he said following the acquittal.
Just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired. I know you're looking for us to be like, oh, go and march. No. This weekend, I want you to hold a community event everywhere from the Bronx to Houston to Seattle to Florida. Black people, whole community event and talk about what you need. Just like everybody else.
This is so disturbing. So number one, he's actually sowing racism and racial divide when again, nothing about this incident had anything to do with race, but he's one of these people making it about race. This is not a case about a black guy being killed by accident when he was being subdued from threatening people. This is about a case about a guy who was killed when threatening people, who was killed by accident when he was being subdued while threatening people. That's what this case, it's not about race, but he can't help but push this racism narrative because he is a racist, because this ideology is racist, because they look at the optics, they look at the race, and then they make their racist pronouncements. They wouldn't make those pronouncements. They didn't make those pronouncements in the case of Jordan Williams. You don't see Hank Newsom out there protesting and saying, wow, they didn't press charges against Jordan Williams. That's because of racism in a white supremacist society. Jordan Williams got off scot-free. We need to protest and have vigilantes. He didn't say that. It's insane. So he's calling for racism. He's saying we need racism. We need racial division. We need racial disharmony. We want people to wrongly take this as some kind of verdict on their race. And then he's saying we need people to get out there and do violence. That's what he means when he says we need black vigilantes. He's trying to get black people in trouble, by the way. This guy, Hank Newsom's not acting as a friend or in any way in the interests of black people in this quote, because he's basically saying black people go out there and do crimes on people. Go out there and do crimes on people. And he's like, if they can kill us, they can kill. Well, Hank Newsom, if you were on a train threatening to kill people, and you might get put in a chokehold. Somebody might subdue you like they did in this case. And again, it wasn't just a white guy that did it. There were several heroes on that train, some of whom were people of color who helped subdue Neely. Because it's not about race. You're conveniently leaving out why he was put in the chokehold. It's crazy. Daniel Penny and the black guy who helped to subdue Jordan Neely were not vigilantes. They didn't go out 2 or 3 days later and try to get revenge or justice or act out their animus on someone. No, they used self-defense in the moment to prevent tragedy, to prevent someone attacking and harming people and using physical force against others. What you're calling for people to do, it's not vigilantism even. You're calling for people to just be aggressors and criminals and to go out and attack people for no reason. Like, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And if you were saying, hey, black people, if you see somebody threatening people, you should jump in. You should jump in and you should do something. Well, they did. They have. There was a black guy who helped to subdue Jordan Neely, necessarily, who helped Daniel Penny to do it. And Jordan Williams, that example we gave. There's another. Jordan Williams stepped in and stabbed a guy to death. A homeless guy who was harassing people on a train. And the DA in New York didn't even bring charges against him. Dismissed the charges. So there you go. It's not about race. All people should be good Samaritans, regardless of race. So I don't even know what it is you're saying, other than I don't think anybody can interpret this. I don't think that there's a better interpretation, let me phrase it that way, than that you, Hank Newsom, are calling for black people to commit criminal acts. That's what you're actually asking for, which is crazy. You don't have the best interests of black people at heart if you're doing that, or people in general. Something's wrong with you. Something's gone wrong with you. And people should pray for you. If I'm serious, if you pray for Hank Newsom, because I used to think he was on the red pill path, and now I'm like, what is he talking about? That's crazy. Cynthia Carter says, hopefully no one decides to listen to this rabble rouser, because he isn't going to go risk his life attack anyone. Right. He's trying to get black people in trouble. Like, what's just he's like pulling a Nick Fuentes, but on the left or something. He's trying to get other people who follow him to do something crazy. She says, but a crazy person might think he means to go and do it. Yeah, exactly. Randy Wallen for $2 says Hank Newsom was and is a con man. You were duped. Okay. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know, Randy. I got to take the advice of others. It helps me to have the perspective of lots of others, especially people who were not ever in the woke left like I was, because it helps me as like a ruler or a measuring stick to figure out like, oh, okay, well, that's what that person's perspective is, having not been in woke, and that's person who was, and so I appreciate it. You're probably right about a lot of the things that you tell me I was wrong about. Kiwi calling for riots. He will be praised by this woke. Yeah, he will. He's calling for violence in the streets. That's insane. Hey, Brahma Bull, good to see you. Brahma says, now, if only we could correct the Chauvin miscarriage of justice. Man, wouldn't that be great? I should do a whole video on that at some point, because there's a lot more perspectives and information stuff that's come out since his conviction. But I do agree, having been down that rabbit hole, I now agree that was a complete miscarriage of justice. Derek Chauvin, who's sitting in jail, who didn't do anything wrong. Okay, I think that's the last one. I think I'm going to end it there. I've got some, I think if I added to it at this point, it would just make it unnecessarily long. And the main points here that I wanted anyone on the left to leave with, if you're watching and you're on the left, here are the questions. That case of Jordan Williams that we presented, the black guy in New York, very similar case, very similar circumstances. The charges were dropped, but they weren't dropped for penny. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that in one case they chose to prosecute, in the other case they didn't? I'm going to ask you another question. Why was the media different? And go and look up the two cases. You'll see that the media was very different when it came to the case of Jordan Williams versus Daniel Penny. Why was the narrative that they were trying to put in your head so that you left with, why was it different? Number 3, why didn't you know Jordan Williams' name? Why didn't any of us know Jordan Williams' name? I didn't know it. Did you? Did you hear about that case? But you heard about the Daniel Penny one, right? Why do you think that is? Why did you hear about one and not the other one? And how many times did you hear about the Daniel Penny one? And how many times did you hear Jordan Neely's name and then painting him as a victim and putting up childhood photos and showing him as Michael Jackson? Why? I've got another question for you. Did you know that he had been arrested for 44 times? Jordan Neely. Did you know that he had attempted to kidnap a 7-year-old girl and he had punched like 2 elderly people in the face, that he had all these assaults and stuff on his record? Did you know that? Did you know that there were 2 other people who helped to subdue Jordan Neely, including the black guy we saw in the pictures? Why didn't you know that? These are just some questions to start kicking around in your mind, especially if you're one of those people like me, when you're at the precipice of starting to ask questions and starting to understand that there's a lot that you don't know, and that potentially the group of people, the echo chamber around you is a pretty sheltering one. When I first started leaving woke, it's not like I looked around and said, I'm in a cult. Like, nobody's going to do that. And I understand that you're not doing that. And I understand why. A couple years later, I was like, oh, it was a cult, once you get way out of it. But at the beginning, I know what that feels like. So I'm just asking you to ask some of these questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. You want to have the facts, right? Like all people, you must hate it when people lie to you and when people manipulate you and try to control what you think and leave out facts. Like in that NBC piece we read at the beginning, where they were leaving out multiple times, they left out the fact that he was threatening to kill people, Jordan Neely. Why'd they do that? Doesn't that bother you? These are the questions I want to leave you with today to think about. And if you have answers to those questions, or if it makes you think, feel free to leave a comment in the chat. And you're welcome here if you want to talk through things with people. A lot of people at Deprogrammed in the chat, a lot of people, there's all kinds of people. There's people who are longtime conservatives. There are people who are libertarians. There are some ANCAP people. God bless them. That's not me, but there's a lot of people who left woke like I did. There's classical liberals. There's all kinds of people. There's atheists, there's Christians, I know there's some Muslims in the chat. We've even got a couple of oh gosh, I got to go back and interview the brony guy in the chat. We got a couple, I got a furry in the chat. There's all different kinds of people. So feel free to stick around. You're welcome. We just ask that you're civil when you ask questions. And I hope you will stick around. Yeah, Ron Copperman, I was a mega liberal, he says. Yep. There are a lot of us. G-Man, please recognize his humanity when bringing up his arrest record. It's so weird, right? He didn't recognize his humanity. So weird. Oh man. Okay. Thank you guys for being here today. I think this time is going to work. So I'll just, if you got here late, I'll just announce now. I'm going to be doing the live shows Mondays and Fridays at 2:00 Central instead of 1:00 to accommodate my one of my gig jobs. And I think that's a better time. And hopefully I think it's going to be a good time. Hopefully it works for you guys. I will see you on Wednesday. We're going to be doing a live pop culture at 8:00 Central, myself and Mystery Chris. And I'm finally working on some interviews. I finally had time to schedule some interviews. So I've got some interviews that we're working on that'll be coming out on the channel. And if you like this video, please consider hitting like and giving it a thumbs up and leaving a comment. And Jimmy Digits over at Rumble says, always the best hats. Merry Christmas to you, Jimmy Digits. And I brought this comment up just to remind you, we do simulcast on Rumble. So if you don't like YouTube, they've been very censorious lately of our channel. If you don't like YouTube, you can watch over on Rumble and it's never censored there. Okay. I'll see you guys later. Take care. Bye.